Salutations all, and I'm here with Gerald Jarman. Gerald.
My name is Gerald Jarman, and I'm here to do a podcast.
Wow.
Let me try that one more time. Greetings and salutations, everybody. Yeah. I am Gerald J. Jarman, back from the dead to give you some more of my crazy ramblings.
There you go. Last week, I was kind of riding solo with the over-sexualization episode. I had the other ones, I sent them an invite, but I guess nobody else decided to show up. So I'm calling out Steven and I'm calling out Hugh. Hugh, I've invited this guy like 3 times, and he still has yet to actually go to one of our group discussions. It's just
shameful. Just shame him every time.
I will.
Let's put his name out there on social media.
Like it's epic fail for him. All right, so let's get into today's topic. Today's topic is self-education. And so where this came from, it was actually through comments on Facebook. And someone was like, hey, maybe you should talk about self-education. And I was like, interesting. Why is that? He was talking about how the school systems in Texas have failed him and his kids, and they don't teach a lot of things, especially Black history. And so he's just like, they don't tell about the full spectrum of things and all that other stuff. So he wanted us to talk about self-education as far as you self-educating yourself on things that are important to you. So let's first talk about just our experiences with self-education. So Gerald, what have you kind of done in an effort to self-educate yourself? And where did it stem from?
Okay. Well, most of the things that I've kind of been self-educated upon. I've been things, related to things I like in particular. Like I like history. I like I do martial arts. I do judo. So sometimes I'll look at like highlight reels or tutorials online, and I'll try to practice those movements. So when I go back to practice again, I'll have a better grasp of those movements. So there's like a variety of things. Like you get with I think I'll have a bit of an easier time with some of the more physical aspects of it, because you can just practice those. You can just practice those and just kind of look at it, get it down, practice the movements, and it becomes muscle memory after that. But with some of the more intellectual pursuits that I've had in the past, I think it's a lot tougher.
In what way?
Well, I mean, it requires a lot more discipline, I think.
Yeah.
Like you can. I guess for me, because I feel that I have an easier time learning on my own when it comes to physical things. I've played rugby, football, baseball, basketball, judo. I've done a bunch of different sports, and a lot of that's kind of coming easy to me. But sometimes when it comes to learning on my own, I have to kind of take a step back and evaluate why I'm doing it and what I'm doing it for. And I have to kind of, teach myself in a way. I guess there's 2 levels of teaching yourself. You're teaching yourself the material, the whatever subject you're trying to learn. I guess building that framework for yourself to be able to actually learn and absorb that knowledge.
That makes sense. I mean, everything always kind of comes back to intentions, and I guess if we want to dive into some of my experiences, we can talk about grade school. And my grandmother had this whole library of all these different books pertaining to Black history and African history. So I was always pre-exposed to some of these things. And I noticed when it comes to grade school, mind you, I went to school in Wisconsin, but whenever we talked about anything that has to do with Black people, it was always very limited. We covered slavery, we covered civil rights. Anything that pertains to Africa was usually limited to Egypt. That was about it. And then obviously slave trade stuff. So there wasn't much to it. And if I was a different person, I would assume that there wasn't any notable things about Africa or Black people in America. Like, you're just like, oh, all right, well, I mean, that's all they've done, so that's basically it. And we spent a lot of time in Europe, which I understand why, because, the Roman Empire and a lot of Western culture built American culture, so it makes sense to understand those cultures. But at the same time, the perspective that's created is this superiority complex for Europeans. Like, they're the only people that matter, and everyone else is kind of just existing. And of course, we did learn about China and the different dynasties there, but we basically didn't care too much about the other countries there. So it was very limited. And if I relied on them to tell me kind of what the world is and how it was shaped, I would have a very distorted view. And so the self-education part of it was very critical because it allowed me to kind of see a broader picture and a fuller image of what I'm actually looking at. And so the self-education told me about the different empires that were in Africa prior to the medieval era, and all the different things that they were able to accomplish. Very similar to all the different things that happened in South America and Mexico. All those different empires, what they were able to accomplish, their culture, the advances that they have made, given their time. Mansa Musa was like one of the richest people on this planet. Basically destroyed the whole value of gold on his trip to Mecca because he was handing it out like candy to people. That stuff wasn't taught about in school. And then even if you want to go into the Americas, the whole education part of slavery is very like, oh, this was abusive. Black people were in turmoil. They're suffering, rape, things like that. But it never really talked about the strife for freedom or the freed blacks and what they were able to do. It glosses over those things. All the inventions that were made, especially the Harlem Renaissance era. I mean, and that wasn't just limited to Harlem. That was everywhere. Houston had its own Harlem Renaissance, which I would encourage people to look up. And you can go to the African American History Museum. They have a ton of books on that. But the self-education was very critical in the aspect of giving me a broader picture of what was going on. And I took that kind of approach to everything, going into college, not being limited to the information that was presented to me and kind of digging a little deeper and finding things. I do want to make a little point, though. I don't want to throw away school. I don't think that's not at all what I'm trying to say. It's useful, but obviously it's limited.
Okay. Well, I mean, I had almost not almost the exact same experience you did. Like here in Texas, if you think you didn't learn a lot about Black history in Michigan,
Wisconsin.
Oh man, do they go out of their way? God. I'm sorry. One of my friends is from Michigan. I've been talking to her about like Michigan stuff for like 2 hours before this. So
no worries.
I apologize. But if you think you didn't learn a lot about Black history in Wisconsin, then oh man, the Texas goes out of its way to deny that slavery existed, that Black people had a bad time here, and that anything was bad for Black people at all during history whatsoever. And it was the same thing here. We have Harriet Tubman, and we get that for 4 weeks out of the year, and that's it. Everybody else gets their own in-depth history, and it's over with. And there's no like real germane discussion of history. There's no. It's just like a bunch of rote memorization of dates and names. There's no cause and effect. There's no analysis. No nothing. We teach history very poorly in this country, I think.
Why do you think that's the case? I mean, if we're talking about two entirely different states, but the outcome has been the same. You think
it's easier to control people if they don't know where they came from. I think if you're able to I guess give this really propagandized view of history that really glosses over bad things. There's no discussion of why things happen, where things like for instance, right? A lot of people think that George Washington was this great general during the American Revolution, right?
Yeah.
Well, George Washington lost almost every single battle he fought against the British. and was basically like backpedaling the entire time, waiting for the French to come over the sea.
Well, yeah, it makes sense.
Horatio,
I mean, look at the people he had with him to fight with him. He had a bunch of farmers.
It's not even that. No. I mean, he had the Marquis de Lafayette, and he had that Polish guy, I forgot his name, helping him train his soldiers. It was Horatio Gates who won the Battle of Saratoga that convinced the French to actually join us and everything. But his name was lost to history. Nobody really knows who Horatio Gates is.
Yeah. Well, a lot of people don't even know how important the French were to our revolution. Like, if it wasn't for the French, we would still be a British colony. Like, that's.
And a lot of people don't know that George Washington was the one that started the French and Indian War, which is the war that caused taxes to go up, which is why the American Revolution happened in the first place. So. So I mean, there's no like it's easier to control people when you give them this kind of Michael Bay version of history where you just highlight the cool explosions and none of the actual real material conditions that people grew up in.
You know what's interesting? To kind of piggyback on that, I read somewhere that some educators use that type of I guess verbiage and language to try to glorify certain things because they don't want people to not love America.
Mm-hmm.
And they think that, if you tell people the truth, they're going to have a negative outlook on their country. But for me, knowing these things actually gives me a better appreciation because I realize how far left we were. Like, to get to this point, the fact that we've did so much shady stuff, and yet we're still producing folks that are doing good work, says a lot about just the resolve of the people. So yeah, if anything, it gave me a better appreciation knowing all the negative stuff. Especially when I hate when people talk trash about Germany and concentration camps, and they don't realize how many concentration camps we had here in the U.S.
Oh yeah,
and abroad.
Well, actually, technically speaking, the modern version of the concentration camp, as you know it, was like a creation of the British Empire, because during the Boer War in South Africa in like the early 20th century, that was the way that was what the British did to the white South African population that revolted against them, because they just put them in these camps, like kind of proto concentration camps essentially. But like with the reservations, yeah, I could see someone kind of saying that too, that they were kind of like a beginner's concentration camp, I guess.
Oh, I wasn't even referring to that, but yeah, that's a good point. I was talking about the Japanese concentration camps during World War II.
Those weren't nearly as bad as
but you still seized people's property.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, that's the same thing that the Germans did to the Jews. They seized their property and gave it to, the military officials and things like that. We went to Japanese American places, took their lands, resold it to white folks, took their wealth, redistributed it. I mean, yeah, we weren't killing them off, but it was still bad.
but you have to look at it. But you have to look at it this way, I guess. Like, I guess. I don't mean to like split hairs here. I guess like when it comes to the Japanese concentration camp, there was like this huge, massive fear that the Japanese were just going to come over and invade and blah blah this and the other thing, and like it ended. They eventually got reparations for it. It was fine. The German camps were explicitly made with the purpose of killing Jews, communists, homosexuals. Society,
a population reducer, if you will.
So yeah, this is Gerald with Holocaust facts.
But I mean, but again, we're not like the shining city on a hill, if you will. Like we're far from it. Yeah.
We are pretty terrible, and it's kind of funny now that like I guess like I remember this article that was like talking about this white paper that like the America is on the verge of like losing its grip on its empire essentially, and like we've done a lot of shady stuff that even kind of come close to the word empire, even though we're not really supposed to be an empire. but we are. It's just like all the people that have had to die just to have that happen.
Yeah, well, my question, I know I've talked to a couple of people about this, so I'll share both sides. So my question was, why do we still have military bases in every place that we've ever had a war in? And some people's answer to that question is, well, national security, it helps with our protection. It's good to have these different bases just in case if something pops off, we have a presence in that area, things like that. But at the same time, I don't know any other country that has a base in the U.S.
It's zero. It's basically to protect our business interests and the business interests of our allies. That's why we have such a huge global military presence.
But in a way, that's
there's no real
colonization. In a way, I mean, that's you're expanding empires. I mean, that's considered U.S. soil where all those bases are.
You have to realize that back during the Iraq War, right? What a lot of people don't realize is like Dick Cheney, Paul Wolfowitz, Donald Rumsfeld, they had this plan, right? That they wanted to essentially create a democracy in the Middle East. Iran, Iraq, I guess maybe some of the other non-cooperative countries like North Korea, like they wanted to basically just kind of create mini Americas that in a place of what used to be our enemies, right? So they had this grand design in place where they would do that, and those new countries that were created with their newly minted democracies would become allies that would be friendly toward our interests, right? But that plan failed, as you well know.
Yeah, the people that they propped up were not the best people in the world, and
oh no,
and then obviously the populations revolted to those leaders. You caused more chaos than was originally there, so on and so forth.
Exactly. I mean, like, there's a reason why we support the House Assad, even though the House Assad is basically like a criminal government at this point.
Yeah.
I mean, I mean, like, we're out to look out. We look out for our business interests, and there's no real reason for us as a country to have so many bases across the world like this. Like, there's no military reason for us to do it. We have a huge military already with the largest budget on Earth, bigger than 10 other militaries combined. We have a population of 300 million heavily armed people, and we also have 2 oceans.
Yes,
we have 2 oceans buffering it. There's no reason for it. And like, unless we're going to get invaded by space aliens tomorrow, I just don't see the reason for it anymore.
Yeah, you're gonna have to either come by sea, air, or somehow travel through Mexico or Canada.
And another effect of that too is like with NATO, like we contribute most of the military power of NATO, right? And that's put a huge drain in our economy and our ability to provide for our own people. Like we don't have public health care in this country. We could easily have public health care in this country if we like halved our military budget, right? Like our $600-700 billion a year military budget. But the countries that we protect in NATO, France, England, Germany, Spain, all those countries, they have universal health care, but they spend like probably 5 to 3% of their GDP on defense.
Well, they don't have to.
They don't need to because they know.
US.
Yeah, because we're going to protect them. Yeah, but at the same time now they're kind of regretting that because Russia is looking west now again, potentially. So they're kind of having to do that now and kind of doing these cost-cutting austerity measures, I guess, in preparation for like a military buildup. So we'll see what happens with that.
And of course, the public's in alarm as well because of the series of terrorist attacks. And so, the public's not going to fight their governments for wanting to up their military budgets at this point in time. We kind of got off topic on that one.
Yeah, we got off here. But yeah, so I guess, so what was like the original crux of this argument we were trying to make here? I guess when it comes to like American history is just like whitewash, blah, 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 like I said before. And it's just used as like this thing of, I guess letting everybody know that we're the best, letting your citizens know we're the best. It's that thing. You have no ability to question us because we're the absolute dominant force in this planet. And that's a good way to control people too, is just kind of give them the illusion or the impression that you're unbeatable, even though you've been beaten a couple times before. And it really, and when it comes to the American education system, like it's not just that. I mean, like English, math is really really poorly taught in this country. Like it's so bad. Like like how many good math teachers have you had, Devontae?
You know what? I had one. She it was junior year of high school. She was actually pretty solid. But everyone else was either mediocre or horrible. Actually, the worst one I had was sophomore year of college. What was it? Business calculus. That lady was terrible.
Mm-hmm.
On top of that, she didn't speak English.
I think
she had a really strong Russian accent.
I think the worst.
So, I didn't understand a thing that lady was saying. On top of her being bad, it was a bad situation. But I was like, it's kind of weird how that's the case because we have all these STEM programs. Isn't STEM supposed to be helping with math? Like, isn't math a part of STEM?
Well, like at what level though? Like at what level do we have a lot of these STEM programs at?
Don't they start in like middle school?
Like now they do. Like I remember. What is this true? You're not as old as I am. Back in middle school, like there was like nothing approaching to what these kids in middle school and high school had today. Like we had nothing. We had regular algebra, geometry. You had your band and you had your English, and maybe you did some football, and that's it. Like nowadays, these kids start going on like a college track, or like a trade school track or whatever, and it's a little different. But I'm wondering how these programs are actually taught and handled, and who's doing it, because a lot of the instruction I got was terrible in a lot of the subjects, and I had to like actually go on my own and learn it independently sometimes. Even in college, I had a terrible statistics teacher in college.
Do you think a lot of that has to do with the fact that everything is taught towards a test?
I think so. I think things that not only are things taught toward a test. I feel like there's like certain things are taught for like a specific like median level, I guess. That like there's no variation in how things are taught. Like everybody has different learning styles or things that they're comfortable with.
Right.
Like I think there needs to be a lot more flexibility when it comes to that, because some kids can't learn visually, some kids only learn orally. I mean, I think that there needs to be kind of a way to like figure that out, and maybe at the same time get rid of the the standardized testing stuff is terrible. I don't know what we do. It doesn't work. It doesn't do anything. And like the public school system was created just to kind of, I guess, have a way for companies to have better trained workers, essentially, right?
Well, yeah. I mean, it's the whole art of what we see today was back in that industrial era, where we needed to pump out educated folks, and so you made the streamlined system like a conveyor belt, and that's how you started the whole grade system. I mean, before that, everyone was in one room, and everybody was kind of being taught at around the same time, and other people had different assignments, but the schools were basically one giant room with a bunch of people from different ages in that one room. But the industrial era changed that into a whole grade system where you divide people by age, and you basically teach everybody the same stuff, and you pump them out like a product.
I don't know. I feel that in today's day, when everything is becoming more automated and technology is having more of a role in people's work, like day-to-day work, I feel that there needs to be a lot more, I guess, flexibility. Like you can't have people coming out to the conveyor belt and, I guess, trying to get the jobs of the 1950s when those jobs are non-existent now.
Right.
A lot of those jobs are gone. Like all those coal miners that were whining during the 2016 election, they're going to be out of a job in about a year and a half, 2 years probably. So they got to find, well, probably a little bit longer than that, but they got to find something else. They got to retrain, and we have to adapt to the society we live in now.
Yeah, that's another thing. And there's been a couple of TED Talks from some certain people trying to reinvent the education system, especially trying to put creativity in the forefront. I don't know if you're familiar with that study about how they followed like a group of students from like, early age to high school, and they noticed as they got older, their creativity decreased every year as they were going through the school system.
Yeah.
And so they're trying to find, I guess, more creative ways, which I guess gives birth to a lot of these private schools, charter schools. I'm wondering, with the invention of all these different things, and if they get more popular, are we going to completely do away with public schools in the public school system? Is everything just going to be privatized?
Honestly, I I really hate to say this because I have family that are in public schools right now. The public school system in America has been a gigantic failure from almost day one, because it was success in like the dominant society, i.e., white people and all that. But in the black community, it's failed because there just weren't enough resources like the dominant society got for it. And even now that things are equal, everybody's integrated and everything, there's still a lot of inequality. There's still a lot of there's not enough due diligence done, and it's just kind of like not great. And when you look at the results compared to other countries, we're not doing a good job because we're paying attention to the wrong things. We don't value the people that are actually in the classroom educating them. It's like,
well, I think part of that is people though. We have to take responsibility for half of what we see. You know, the fact that a lot of the neighborhoods, especially in black neighborhoods, that didn't have a lot of resources is due to the fact that people didn't pay enough tax, and the fact that a lot of folks and I was going to mention, and a lot of folks who have higher incomes move out of those communities to areas that don't need other people to help pay with their taxes.
Well, a lot of how a lot of public schools are funded is with property taxes, right? And like you said before, like the school districts with higher, I guess, property values usually have like the absolute best schools because they're willing to put money in them. But like a lot of what happened to a lot of inner city schools is like a lot of the white people had like they had the white flight, all the white people left. All the higher paying jobs left the cities and went to the suburbs and everything.
But you do need to add the wealthy blacks leaving as well. I mean, that's a huge factor. I mean, I can't fault white people for leaving because they have no loyalty towards our community. But the fact that the wealthy black folks leaving, going to these white neighborhoods, you can't say that doesn't have a huge effect. If anybody's going to be loyal to a community, it has to be us. Like we have to give to ourselves first before we ask others to give to us.
But the point I'm trying to make is like those are like those wealthy black people that were leaving out of the community weren't the mean, you know what I'm saying? That those are like outliers. When you have a community that's universally poor and downtrodden, there's no work available, nobody has enough money to start a business, you know, things aren't really going to be as good as the other communities, you know what I'm saying? So, I mean, I do understand that this sort of thing happened. You have the few wealthy black people that were there kind of leave because the conditions got bad, but the conditions got bad there for a reason, because people weren't allowed to get loans. There were so many laws against people having certain business. Like remember in Nacogdoches, I remember someone saying in Nacogdoches that like black people could only have businesses on one street in the city. That
one
was like
side of the railroad tracks.
Yeah.
You couldn't actually buy a house in that other side either. Yeah.
Oh yeah. Like when you have stuff like that going on, when you have all these laws, when you have the funding being cut specifically for your schools and not the other schools, then I mean, what do you expect to happen?
But I guess I'm confused with all that because, I mean, I look at other community groups and they're able.
A lot of a lot of other community groups never had to go through the same things we had, though.
That is true.
Could you imagine if the if the Asian community or the Hispanic community had to go through what we go through.
I guess
Like even 1/10 of it.
I guess my question is, how do we move forward? I mean, given where we started, and mind you, before desegregation, we did have a lot of real estate owned by black people.
Mm-hmm.
And actually, there is an argument out there suggesting that desegregation actually started deteriorating our communities.
Because a lot of black people were like, "Yay, I'm free now. Let's go spend all our money in the white community."
Right.
And all those black dollars went into other people's pockets and didn't go to the pockets of the people around them.
And so you have a situation now where there was a statistic floating around out there saying that African American dollar is like the third richest African nation on the planet in terms of gross, but like that money only gets circulated like 3 seconds in our own community.
Yeah,
like 1 or 2 times maybe. So I feel like there's enough money there for us to change things, but we would have to do a serious redirect.
I think that here's my grand vision for it.
Okay.
I feel that we as black people would probably just have to re-gentrify our own neighborhoods.
Okay.
By that, what I mean is we go in there, we start businesses, we build our own properties, we own and control our own things, just like other communities do. Other communities do that, and they're just fine. We get stuck with like the bad end of the stick with, I guess, just our general condition here in this country, and we just kind of leave and go off somewhere else and go live with other people. I guess if we had the wherewithal to do that, we'd be fine in a couple of generations, I think. We need our black middle class and our upper class to kind of band together and unite and spend money in our own neighborhoods.
Yeah. Buy
things from each other, do business with each other.
Establish banks.
Do business with other people.
Establish banks so we can give out loans.
Exactly. Like you can't create wealth without having that basic capital there before.
Yeah.
So I mean that's what we need to do. And I wish there were more people calling to do that. Like there's not anybody saying that we need to do that.
Re-gentrify
have the ability to essentially yes. We should re-gentrify ourselves and gentrify other neighborhoods too. Just like how in every black neighborhood, there's always some sort of Arab liquor store, like a Chinese grocery shop or nail salon. All that money in that black community goes to people that don't live there and will spit on you if they had the chance.
You know what's funny? I went to a black church like months ago. It was like a fashion show event. And when I walked in, I mean, the people who were organizing the event were black, and most of the congregation were black. There was a section of the whole fashion room where they had vendors, and people who you could buy things from. And there was a lot of Asian people there, and they had like jewelry, and there was a makeup lady. Another person had like a boutique for dresses and things like that, but they were all Asian. And I was just like, I wonder if there are black people going to Asian religious places or just Asian gathering places.
Oh,
and setting up shops there.
You would get walked out. There would be security called and everything. But and speaking of the black church, that's another thing too. Black people have this obsession with wanting to spend 10% of their already tiny paycheck to give to God, quote unquote. When God doesn't need your money, he's God. Like, save your money. Save your money and invest it in yourself.
Do deeds, please. I want deeds. I don't need your money. Do good work, please.
I think the pastor needs money to keep his lights on, but that's about it. That's like $200. Like, you don't need to give 10% of your earnings in perpetuity to someone who created the universe. He doesn't need it.
I mean, on top of that, dude, like the money that they receive is tax-free.
Yeah. And a lot of sometimes you all that tax-free money leads to some of our religious leaders becoming just the most absolute corrupt people possible. And I don't know.
I was at a barbershop actually. I mean, all these random outside influences actually incorporating in this discussion is pretty awesome. Anyway, I was at a barbershop not too long ago because I had to get my hair cut for an event. And we were talking about the black church and how he was like, man, if we were able to take like half of the money generated in churches and just redirect it into banks and stuff like that, that could fix a whole bunch of problems. And it makes me wonder how much money are churches gathering and what are they doing with that money? Because I know there's some churches out there who are very involved in communities, and they have events and all those different things. But on just the broad spectrum of things, just related to black churches, I wonder how much of that money is actually being put back into the community.
I'm gonna look this up right now. Oh my God, Devontae.
What's up,
Devontae?
I'm here.
I just put in black church tithes into Google, and you're not gonna believe the amount of money that we put into the black church in 30 years.
Are you looking at like the very first like entry? It was like $420 billion.
$420 billion. That's like the GDP of small countries.
Dude, that's back. And this one of the articles I'm looking at, it was written back in 2009. So imagine what that number is today.
That's insane.
And that's a good question. One of the articles is, where is this money? Where is it?
Do you know what $426 billion could have been used for to help the?
And that's what I'm saying, dude. Like, where is this money going? Because how can you be an expensive church and everything around you looks like crap? Like, I would feel bad as the preacher of that establishment. I'd be like, this is not right. We need to do something about this.
One of the church that me and my mom used to go to when I was like a little kid here in my city. The church I used to go to was in this like little tiny building that was like built there in like 1910, and they were talking about going and moving to a building for like a long time, right? Like a new building, and like they did not long ago, right? And this thing's massive. It has like a juice bar in it, and it's like out in the middle of nowhere, like the country, and it's just like like why? Like what all of that money, $420 billion. Do you know $420 billion can improve every inner city area in this entire country all at once?
Yeah.
That's nuts. I should become a preacher.
But Gerald, this is why I say, like, we have the power to change ourselves, but for some reason we don't. It's like we have enough people, we have enough capital. If you look at our spending habits and where, how much money we combined have, we have enough people who know things, about real estate, about banking. So we have everything we need. It's just we don't have we don't put these things together.
We just need to go ahead and do it, make it a priority, and not wanting to work for other people to make them wealthy.
Yeah.
Or at least other people that don't look like you. Like I'm more than fine with everybody of any other race. I'm dating a person in a relationship right now, but it's an average of $252 million a week could help everybody in the black community.
Yeah.
I just let me look at some GDPs. Let's see what the lowest GDP on Earth is. I want to see what countries has the lowest GDP compared to what the black community puts into other people's hands every year, or for the past 30 years, rather. I'm sorry. New schools and hospitals and roads and.
Now that would be interesting, actually, because I mean now, especially if you look at Houston, one guy owns most of the hospitals here in Houston. Like, that's crazy.
Of course.
And there's this Asian dude who owns Beltway 8, naturally.
Oh, I put in the wrong term. I should put in gross national product, not gross domestic. GNP. Who country has the lowest gross national product? So you mean to tell me that the black community has put in like slightly more money into the hands of preachers than the gross national product of Switzerland circa 2005? Switzerland has the 17th highest gross national product in the year 2005, with $409 billion.
That's funny.
So you mean to tell me that black people have put in more money than Switzerland has in 1 year over a 30-year time period, and everything's still messed up? Like, it's just $420 billion just gone in the wind. You'll never get that money back ever again.
We're gonna have to pick up this conversation another time, but appreciate having you, Gerald.
Oh, no problem, man.
And if you guys want, you can like us on our Facebook page, Total Medulla. Follow me on Twitter, Devo Primo. Or Gerald, do you have a social media stuff?
I have a Twitter. You can at me. You can yell at me at Jaguar986 on Twitter.
That's a terrible name, but it's okay. That's fine.
You know what? I'm just whatever. All right. Don't judge me. There's no judgment zone.
That's funny. Well, that'll do it for today's episode, guys. Feel free to send emails. A lot of you guys have been sending emails through the general AfroVibes contact page. I don't get those. So if you're trying to send me an email, send it to my page contact form, not the general website's form. But again, I'll do it for today's episode. We'll see you guys next week.